This is the Ben Mulroney Show, but on days like today, I like to make space and share the microphone with my friends. So please welcome, for This Week in Politics, Regan Watts and Andy Gibbons. Welcome to the both of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Ben. Happy Wednesday.
Our Prime Minister went down to Washington for, I believe, the second time and sat with Donald Trump inside the Oval Office. He did not get Zelensky'd, but it was a circus unto itself. And I would love your assessments. Andy, we're going to start with you.
Well, I was struck firstly by, had Pierre Poilievre been prime minister and had he said the things he said to Donald Trump yesterday, CBC would have 24-hour coverage about it. From, I wore a red tie for you, you're transformative. It was a lot. He gushed and blushed over Donald Trump. So that was quite surprising. I thought it was a bit over the top, to be honest. But on the plus side, Donald Trump acknowledged him as an incredible negotiator and a world-class leader. So that's a big dub for Mark Carney.
Yep.
But I was just thinking to myself, man, if a conservative leader had said things about Donald Trump, it's all we'd hear about.
Of course, there's one rule for me, one rule for thee. But Regan, give me your sense of the pomp and the pageantry, but then also give me your sense of what did Prime Minister Carney come home with?
So, Ben, a couple comments as I was reflecting on this issue this morning. First off, I think Andy's absolutely right, just to echo what he said around the media coverage in this country. If it was Mr. Poilievre or Stephen Harper or even your father making those types of comments to Donald Trump, it would be 24/7 coverage for the rest of the week, and they would be ensuring it's a topic of Thanksgiving dinner on the weekend.
Yep.
In terms of the pomp and circumstance, I think that's what comes with being Prime Minister of Canada when you go to Washington, and I think that's appropriate. I think the president rolled out appropriate red carpet for our Prime Minister, and he is our Prime Minister, and that was all fine. I was struck by a couple of things. First, when Mr. Carney was in the Oval Office, one of the first things he said, and it has to be acknowledged today, is that we are 2 years plus 1 day since those hostages were taken in Israel by Hamas. And they must be returned home. And we shouldn't forget that. And Prime Minister Carney said that in the Oval Office with the President of the United States beside him, talking about his peace plan. Secondly, sometimes, and I think that needs to be acknowledged and kudoed. The second thing that I think is worth pointing out to your listeners and your viewers is sometimes the Prime Minister just goes down to have meetings without any expectation of anything coming back.
Well, and you're right. Like we were given, it was a decidedly un-Mark Carney government thing to do, where they actually downplayed and lowered the expectations going into Washington, saying it was going to be a working trip.
Sure, but Ben, sometimes maybe they're learning, his Prime Minister's office is learning actually how to do their jobs and managing expectations. My experience, I worked at the Department of Foreign Affairs, and I'd been to the State Department and the Oval Office and the White House. My experience is prime ministers and first ministers go down to Washington with one of two objectives. One is at the ministerial or prime ministerial level, either to sign a deal or announce a deal. And we would have had leaks about that ahead of this trip. Or second, and I think that was the purpose of this trip, to go and unstick some things that maybe need to be handled at the leader level between the two countries. I'll note that the Prime Minister had a working dinner last night with Vice President Vance. And so this was hardly just a trip to the Oval Office and then home. There are clearly some things that they're working on, steel, aluminum, autos. Those were all things that the Prime Minister mentioned and the President mentioned. And so this was, from my account, a successful trip, because we're at least seeing some progress and hearing noise about that. And I have to tell you, I was very proud of the Prime Minister. I think Andy was purring in his earlier comments. I am certainly purring now. The Prime Minister went down and behaved like an adult, and we have a world-class leader, President Trump said. And I think that's a positive from the long national nightmare known as Justin Trudeau that we've well and truly turned.
Andy, you want to button this up for us?
Yeah, the other thing is just how much attention, people complain, Ben, Americans don't know us, they don't get us, they don't, all of these things. Look at Trump and what he said, his joke about the merger, right? And when he said, just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. They know how sensitive Canadians are. They pay attention to every word our political class and media say, and how we talk about their country to their ambassador. And all of these issues matter. So Carney's, I think, very wise to bring the temperature down. But this idea that they don't get us, don't get what motivates us, aren't in tune, I just don't agree with that. Donald Trump very clearly, in a joking, jovial way, really understands how sensitive and prickly we are about all talk.
All right, well, let's move to purely domestic issues in just a few minutes. Once my show is done today, I'm going to be sitting down with Premier Danielle Smith. She's in town, and so we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation. And one of the topics that we are going to take on is, the war of words between Alberta and British Columbia, between Danielle Smith and Premier Eby. And this is a far cry from the optimism that so many of us had about this, breaking down interprovincial trade barriers and working together. This is a moment in time where we can all nation build and take one for the team and see, empathize with a province on the other side of the country. And it seems like those days are gone. And I will start with you, Andy.
Yeah, I hope you have a good conversation with the Premier. She's had an incredible visit to Central Canada. I think, she's right. If Alberta's oil belongs to all of Canada, so does BC's coast. And I think she has to make this point time and time and time again in every single venue she can, because that is right and that is the truth.
Yeah.
And also the idea that exporting clean energy from our coast in British Columbia is something that needs a return on. No, that's what our country should be doing. Everyone agrees with this.
Yeah.
And how Mark Carney plays referee here is going to be a real test. A top test for a prime minister. So, but Danielle Smith is on point, on track, and making the point in all the places she has to. And it's a double standard that's not fair to her and her people.
Andy, I really like what you just said about, if the oil belongs to everybody, then so too does the coast. That's actually my approach when I'm on airplanes, where if I'm on the aisle seat and the person next to me won't close the window, then I say, fine, you're not going to close the window because you own the window. Well, guess what? I own the aisle. Good luck going to the bathroom. And there you go. Yeah, that's sorry.
But then,
what if it were you?
Do you recline?
Of course I recline. Sadly, I can't do that on WestJet anymore. But yes.
But on Premier Smith, I'll just say I think she has been, of the premiers, she gets a lot of flack from Central Canadians who don't spend 10 seconds trying to understand Alberta and Western Canada. And he's absolutely right about the coast and who owns the oil and how we get it to market. I think the Premier deserves enormous credit for her work in advancing this project. I think it was a smart move politically to announce that the province wanted to build a project. And I have to give kudos to her and Minister Schultz, Rebecca Schultz and her province, who've done a great job advancing environmental regulations so we can get clean oil out of the ground. And the Premier is doing all of the right things. And the Prime Minister, I don't know if Andy's term is right as referee. I think the Prime Minister will make the right business decision for the country. And let's remember, and people in Ontario probably don't appreciate this, Premier Eby is in a leadership review right now with his party. Yeah. So, of course, he's going to take the most extreme left-wing positions. He may be a bit of an extreme left-wing premier, and that's sort of consistent for British Columbia New Democrats, but he's also fighting for his political life with his party. And so his posture, however misguided it may be, it needs to be understood in the context of the local politics that he's dealing with.
Well, I'd love your sense of, the Premier of Alberta raised the specter of, Western alienation leading to possibly a Western separatist movement while she was on this press tour here in Central Canada. Some have taken great umbrage to that, saying, you're opening Pandora's box and you really shouldn't do that. But if she's just calling it as she's seeing it on the ground, I don't know that I can fault her. And I'd love to know, Andy, your thoughts on that.
Well, I hope she holds up a billboard today and shows all of the foreign tankers that are operating along the BC coast.
Yeah.
And explains that Canadian tankers aren't allowed to do the exact same thing that foreign tankers are. Like, are we suckers? On the point of separatism, she has to manage that.
Yeah.
But it's like anything. When Quebec separatism was big, people didn't dismiss it out of hand.
You know what, and I'm gonna. I was not paying attention to the clock. I'm gonna ask you to put a pin in that. We're gonna take a break, come back. The floor will be yours, and then we're gonna give it to Regan, and he can purr all he wants. Don't go anywhere. This is the Ben Mulroney Show. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of the Ben Mulroney Show.